Currie Archives. This is episode 1. The Currie family's got a legacy in many different directions with off-road, on-road, you name it, Jeeps, everything. So I wanted to basically get my uncles and my dad to start telling stories. Everywhere we go, people are always asking questions. People always want to hear the stories. I want to start documenting everything that they've been through in their life, all the good times, the bad times, the successful times, the unsuccessful times. And really, I've just taken some things that I've learned, and I want to start documenting what's going on. So I got my dad, Ray, and my Uncle John with me tonight. We are actually in Moab, Utah, at Easter Jeep Safaris 2023. The event is getting bigger and bigger. I've been coming for 20 years, maybe longer, and it's great. So what I want to do tonight, we're gonna start from the beginning with both you guys. Is what I want to do is, in motorsports, obviously around racing and everything we have going on with Currie Enterprises and Rock Chalk, is I want to start from the beginning. With you being older, John, Uncle John, what was the beginning of basically Currie? For me, it's Currie Enterprises, motorcycle racing and everything. As far as when did you think that you were going to be into motorsports rather than baseball or a scientist or something else?
When did I think that? My dad wasn't going to take us to the Boy Scouts or play any sports. It was, he was working too hard at that time. So anything we did was more like, here's a pile of wood, here's some nails, here's a hammer, go out and make something out of that. And most of the time we were bending the nails and straightening them out and putting them back into the wood again. So that's kind of one of the earliest memories I have of doing stuff, or my dad telling us to do stuff, because when we were younger, my dad worked a lot. I mean, when you guys knew him, he wasn't working as much, but we had a little house in Anaheim, off of Euclid, and he had, I don't know, maybe we're on an acre or something. It was small, and he had a yard behind the house, and he had like a 2-car garage, and he had his machine shop set up in there, and he would do like engine swaps for people and stuff like that. And then when he was working at Taylor Dunn Manufacturing, he made a deal with the old man Taylor to supply rims for golf carts. And so he would do that after work. He would work his 8 hours a day at Taylor Dunn Manufacturing, and then he would come home and work at night on that stuff. So there was, growing up, I remember, and my mom would help my dad as well. When they loaded the truck, my mom would be out there, loading stuff, and, these are the earliest memories I actually have of my dad working. As far as the motorsports deal, I remember growing up, my dad would, I think it was Friday nights, we'd go to the sprint car race at Ascot. So me and Charlie and probably Ray, my little brother, not so much because he was the youngest one. I just remember running around down by the fence where the clay would shoot up over the fence, and we would collect the clay and make, these clay balls out of clay at the sprint car races at Ascot on Friday nights. We looked forward to being there. That was, the thing. My dad knew Bobby Hogle was kind of the local guy from the racetrack. So that was, kind of a big deal. So as far as, that's concerned, my earliest memories of getting involved in motorsports was sprint car racing.
Was he involved, or was he just a fan?
He was, but very limited. He actually drove because Bobby Hogle wasn't old enough. So he would actually drive Bobby Hogle's car. This was back in the early days, and that's probably before my time. But he said, yeah, I got to drive a few times because Bobby Hogle at the time wasn't old enough to drive the car, so he did. So, and I don't know exactly how he was, befriended of Bobby Hogle, but he had some other friends, that they were, hung out there in the Anaheim area. And Bobby Hogle was sponsored by, it was the Tamale Wagon. So he was sponsored by Alex Tamales. Well, Alex Tamales was right in, I believe it's in Anaheim or Fullerton. So that was kind of the local thing. Alex Tamales always had like the hottest car, best looking car, best sounding car. Like my dad said, they'd go to the races, their car would actually idle. Most other cars wouldn't, they didn't run that good. So that was kind of the early days of motorsports as far as being involved with my dad.
Same. Is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the sprint car deal, my mom went into labor with me at Ascot. And I remember, my mom telling me, yeah, Dad wouldn't leave until after the main was over. And we had to, rush down to the, we parked, we didn't pay whatever, 50 cents to park in the parking lot. We parked in the housing tracks. And they, had to run back to where they had parked and raced back to Anaheim to the hospital for me to be born after a sprint car race, on July 31st, 1960. And, but, even then, I remember going to the sprint car races even after we moved from Anaheim out to Yorba Linda. We were going to the sprint car races on Friday nights. It was a standard deal. It was like brushing your teeth when you went to bed. We went to the races on Friday night. That was it. And I remember a little bit more because, my dad, the Bobby Hogle and the racers, my dad, he was into it. He didn't have the money to race, but he helped those guys, at home before they went to the track. And, and we would go there to watch the results of whatever they were working on to try to make the cars faster. But, those were, bizarre times back in the day. When you think back, that was a long ways from Anaheim to go all the way to the end of the 91 freeway to watch those races. And we were all dead asleep coming back, in the back of the station wagon or whatever.
So at that time, was Currie Enterprise even a thought, or was that just him working at Taylor Dunn?
Well,
or was that before Taylor Dunn?
Well, he was working full-time at Taylor Dunn, and, he had people working for him at home, disassembling, buying rims, disassembling rims, and, he would load the truck, at night, and then my mom would drive it to Taylor Dunn during that day and make the delivery. He had a Dodge flatbed truck.
Yeah.
And she would make the delivery during the day. My mom worked there first. They met at Taylor Dunn, but after they had kids, she stayed home. So she was basically running Currie Enterprises while he was at Taylor Dunn.
So they actually met in California then.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Grandpa was born in California, and
Yep.
Grandma was born in West Virginia.
Yep.
And
So when the day my mom graduated high school, she hopped on a bus to go to Los Angeles, and she got anxious. They never made it to Los Angeles. She got anxious and got off the bus in Anaheim, California. And, that's, got a job at Taylor Dunn. And, she was basically their first employee after Taylor and Dunn. And then sometime after that, my dad went to work there. That's where they met.
So now, as far as Taylor Dunn goes, how did Currie become that? As far as everyone understanding, where did Currie come from then? As far when people think of Currie Enterprise, it's always muscle car rims, hot rod rims, Jeep off road. But where did Currie Enterprise come from? What was it?
Well, go ahead.
So, Taylor Dunn was a fab shop, and they folded chicken wire and made chicken coops. There was between Los Angeles and Orange County, there was a huge area out in the middle of there, La Habra, that was all chicken coops. And at some point, Mr. Taylor came to my dad and asked them. The chicken farmers were using gas-powered vehicles to collect the eggs, and they would put a water hose on the tailpipe, but just the noise from the engines would reduce the number of eggs that the chickens would lay. And they came and asked my dad, hey, can you build an electric car? And my dad was, MacGyver before there was a MacGyver.
Yeah, he was the Air Force. He was probably a mechanic before he went in the Air Force, but actually in the Air Force, he became, a jet mechanic, and then he taught jet mechanics in the Air Force. So when he was working at Taylor Dunn was after he'd gotten out of the Air Force.
And how long was he in the Air Force?
Just 4 years. It was in Korea.
Yeah, he went to Texas, Oklahoma, Korea, came back, and then they sent him to school because they're going to put him out, back into the public. But there was no jet airplanes at that time. Only the military had jets. So he went to diesel mechanic school in Chicago, and then it came back with a skill basically that I don't know that he ever really used.
I think he worked as a diesel mechanic for like in the oil fields for a short period of time and realized really quick that that's not what he wanted to do. He worked at a couple places. I think he worked for the telephone company, and he said he actually liked the job, but he would get so much work done that the other people at the telephone company didn't like him because he didn't smoke. He would go down in a hole and start putting telephone wires together. And normally these jobs would take like 2 days to do them. And, he would get them done in a day. Well, it made the other people working there look bad because he's getting so much work done. So they despised him. He ended up leaving. He goes, yeah, since I didn't smoke or anything, and back, you got to remember, this is back in the early 50s, when this was happening, and he goes, yeah, I like the job, but his supervisor told him that, yeah, you work too hard, and he ended up leaving.
Yeah. So I had, heard a story from my dad that, he was looking for a job, and he went to Taylor Dunn, and when he went there, he was looking at all the tools they had. They had, grinders and drill presses and, lathes and welders. And when he took the job, he was like, well, I can use all this stuff for my own benefit, right? So he was working there, but also, became friends with the owners and was, using their stuff. But when they came to him and said, hey, can you, in 1954, can you build an electric car, for collecting eggs? Of course, he said, yeah, and they went to the farms and seen what they were doing, and they came back and they built an egg picker, this vehicle that had a treadle, you leaned forward and it went forward, and you leaned back and it stopped, and if you leaned to the left, it turned left. It had a tiller that went
between your legs.
Between your legs.
So you actually steered it. You would just stand up, so both your hands are free. So you'd lean forward to go forward,
so
or you would actually just
both hands.
push down on your toes or push on your heels, more like that. And then the tiller went between your legs. You would steer it like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were they were super simple. They were 3 wheels, one wheel in the front, 2 wheels in the back. A lot of the early ones were like 1-wheel drives. They just had like a chain drive off their electric motor. And as time went on, he was working at Taylor Dunn. He designed the first like golf cart for Taylor Dunn, and that's when Currie Enterprises started. When he designed it, he took a early Ford Banjo style rear end and narrowed it down because they wanted a differential in this car to have both rear wheels drive. So he took early Ford Banjo style rear end and narrowed it, and he designed that car. Well, at first, Taylor Dunn was going out and buying the rear ends and doing all that work. And then, it was just a big deal to them, and a big hassle to buy the rear ends and to tear them down and clean them and whatever. And then he contracted with Taylor Dunn to supply the rear ends to Taylor Dunn. And he did it. I remember him. I don't remember people working there. But now that you're talking about it, I think one of my mom's cousins from West Virginia had moved out there, Paul Burnside. And Paul Burnside, my dad hired Paul to come over and tear down rear ends, And Paul was like a janitor at a school or something. So he would come and tear down rear ends on his off time, or
So now, how old were you guys when all this was going? Are you even born yet, or?
Currie Enterprise started in 59. I was born in 60.
Yeah, I was born in 57. So
Okay,
I was 2 years old.
We didn't know what was going on.
So Grandpa when he brought his cousin out, or Grandma's
My mom's
cousin,
cousin,
Yeah.
and that was so you guys. So Grandpa was doing the side hustle then.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking you guys were a little bit older.
My dad always was doing the side hustle. When he was doing V8 conversions for people in Model A's and stuff like that. So that was going on for a long time. He was a hot rodder. He was a Southern California hot rodder.
So did he always have a hot rod then?
I don't know if he always had a hot rod. He would build certain hot rods. he's got some pictures of he had some stuff when he was in the service in Texas and stuff. He had like a Model T with it had
A Frontenac.
a Frontenac engine in it.
Model T with the overhead valve engine, or overhead valve head on it.
Yeah, we have some pictures of this stuff, but it's not like a hot rod you're thinking it's all pretty. No, this is a bunch of junk thrown together. I wouldn't even call it a rat rod. It's not. It wouldn't even be at the level of a rat rod. It was literally just like a dirt track car, something they could go out and, do donuts out
run through the orange
into
groves.
fields and run down dirt roads. And then, he had that Model T with that Frontenac, and then there was a Model A with a 32 shell on it. I have some pictures of. With like a nice slanting windshield in it. And then one of the ones that we remember, though, he had a Model A pickup with a Hemi in it. And one of the reasons we remember that is because a good friend of ours, his uncle, and I didn't know this friend of ours at the time, but my dad had sold that Model A pickup to a school teacher in Buena Park or Anaheim, I think at Western High School. And that guy's name was Dick Hoffman. So, and he still has that Model A pickup today.
What year was it?
That was back.
What was your truck?
It was a 1930 Model A pickup, and he'd gotten the engine when he went to diesel school in Chicago. He had found a wrecked Chrysler, whatever they were,
300,
and he got the engine out of it and brought it back to California. And then he took that engine, and he had this nice Model A pickup and put it in this Model A pickup. And this was probably in about the year like 56 or 57. Our oldest brother was born in 55.
55.
So he had this nice Model A pickup. It was all painted. It had this Chrysler Hemi in it. This friend of his, Dick Hoffman, wanted the pickup. And, that's one of the big hot rods I remember back in the day. Most of the time when we were growing up as kids, he just worked all the time, and he got. But anyways, the story of that pickup goes along is that school teacher is now in his 90s, 94, and he still has that Model A pickup. But he's so we're all kind of watching, how many more years can, Dick, go before we could actually try to buy that Model A pickup back?
So does it still run?
No, he took it apart back in the late 50s. He took the pickup apart. He has the engine out of it and the floorboards off of it, and he still has like the engine sitting there on an engine stand. The engine's painted yellow. I think he had some different high performance parts for the engine. And the floorboards, he had the running boards chrome plated, but he never put it back together. It's in pieces.
It's all
in
there,
his
though.
garage.
It's all there.
Now he lives in Yorba Linda now.
Wow.
So one of these days we might actually get that back.
That's
I don't know.
super cool.
But that is probably one of the early hot rods I remember that he had. I remember growing up, like he would have these MGs, like an MGTD, and me and my brother would get in the back of it. It doesn't really have a back seat. It has where the fold down top goes, or the
convertible top.
Convertible top would fold down, and we'd crawl, and we'd be standing up in the back seat, and we'd be driving this MG around town. That's one of the memories I have. Back in the early days.
Yeah, he did V8 conversions on those. They took Ford V8 60s and put them in MGTDs. So they go from like 25 horsepower to 60 horsepower.
It's double. That's wild. So then obviously you being born in 1960 or 1957, as far as when you're younger, so Grandpa worked a ton and always was working, which obviously when he retired in 1983 when I was born, but up until when you were born, when you guys were getting old enough, at what point did you guys become enough to understand what you're doing to start working, just even in general, like as far as on your own hobbies, as far as in the shop, whether it be dirt bikes or cars or golf carts and stuff like that, as souping them up? Was it always around, or was it at some point Grandma wanted you to play baseball?
No, that never happened.
No, well, I remember, when we actually started working, or me and my older brother, because me and my older brother were in the same grade. my brother, I caught up with my brother, just put it that way. And so we ended up in the same grade. When we were in like 5th and 6th grade, we were in the same grade, I think from about 4th or 5th grade all the way up. So my dad had told us if we worked during the summer that he would buy us a motorcycle at the end of summer. And this was between 5th and 6th grade. So me and my brother, Charlie, now Ray was younger, so he was probably not involved in that. But we were old enough that like a 9-inch Ford third member, which weighs like 80 pounds, I could, with both arms, I could lift it, up to my knees. So, and that's kind of when we got started in working for my dad, or working for Currie Enterprises, and that would have been, like I said, when we were in like 5th grade.
Now at that point right there, was there employee, like how many employees did Grandpa have on the, obviously it was a side hustle because he still worked at Taylor Dunn, but did he actually have employees then? He had
employees. That Paul Burnside worked there for a while. Another guy was Skip Rudolph. And Skip,
who still works for you today.
Skip works for, which is,
crazy.
He's 80 something years old, has a, defibrillator, and, but he actually he had just got out of the Vietnam War and was dating a friend of the family. And my dad got him a job at Taylor Dunn Manufacturing. Well, and then he would work at Currie in the evening. And it was if when I was doing my algebra homework, I had a question, I'd just go out, I'd walk out there, Skip would be working in, on the rack, all greasy. And hey, I got a question about this algebra. Can you help me with it? And he would look, oh yeah, this, that, I remember that distinctly. And then Skip went on to become like the CEO or CFO, vice president of Taylor Dunn at one point.
What's funny about that, like on my story, is that one of the guys that works for Currie now worked for Taylor Dunn as an engineer. But one thing that like he said about Taylor Dunn and all the people that worked there is the way that Taylor and Dunn ran it. That like the organization and the way that they did it. Like there's so many skill sets that they put in place that even Skip, talking to Skip as now we're older, that he had so much respect for everything that like Taylor Dunn and Grandpa and Grandma, the things that were done in the early 60s, how important it was for them at their younger or older days. Because it is impressive, like how there's certain companies out there that did such a well job and the way they ran the business. Like, and Skip, his stories are phenomenal. Like with the things that he was taught from Taylor Dunn and from Grandpa, like running obviously working at Currie Enterprise.
They had a lot of experience there. Not only they were getting that experience from the owners of the company, my dad at one point had 300 people working underneath him.
Oh, is that big?
He was, he was a production manager. They were building 800 golf carts a month.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that big.
Take the scale of that. Currie Enterprises is still a small company, but imagine you're a production manager and you have 300 people that are working on a production line.
I did not. So Grandpa was managing a lot of people then.
Oh yeah, it was a big deal.
So I mean, they were delivering 50 brands a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah. So So it got so busy, at the end he had, I think it was in the, early 80s, he had to leave because he had to go full time to find enough friends to supply them. And that's why he actually left. It wasn't that, he needed to work full time at just the Currie part of it to supply them. And that went on until Yamaha and the Japanese kind of killed the golf car market. And we were selling 800 rims a month down to 400.
Wow.
Well, that was basically the time that we were graduating from high school. And that was the time that, that gave us enough time to get into automotive aftermarket. So that was kind of the new era. That's where everything changed. You go, hey, we're only doing half as much. So what do you have? Now we got extra time. Let's do something else. We got in, we started getting into automotive.
So that's where it leads. And that's something like as of recent, obviously, like when you start looking at the dates, like everyone, Grandpa always did Currie Enterprises, but it seems like when the muscle car and hot rod became popular and even the Jeep side of it became more popular was in the early 80s. And like it's now understanding what he did and how hard he worked. But the transition is the fact that, you guys, you know, the three of you guys really is what took Currie to make it into the automotive side of it.
Yeah.
And Grandpa didn't do so much of the muscle car side and the hot rod side.
Yeah, and that kind of came after. My dad actually pretty much fully retired in '85, and that's when we moved from Placentia into the building in Anaheim. When we moved in that building, he says, "Hey, this is yours. You know, whatever you guys do with it." He goes, and pretty much he goes, "Yeah, I don't really have anything invested in it. You know, I never thought it was going to make any money, so I never put any money in it. You know, everything I did, every penny I made was, it was, if I spent a penny, I was going to get two back. You know, that's the way he did everything.
Yeah.
So we actually started putting, investing in it because it was our future.
Yeah, and that's what, like, I've been telling my dad that more than ever is like understanding the time frame. Is that how did you guys know to start building hot rod rims? What was making hot rod and muscle cars popular? Like, how did you even know?
It wasn't supply and demand. We didn't know there was demand, but we had mountains of 9-inch Ford rims in the backyard, and people saw them and would come up the driveway. Hey, I need a rear end for my whatever. And I was still in school.
I actually had a rear end business that I was running on the side. And
oh, really?
I was selling rear ends to SoCal pickups in Buena Park. I had like a 50. They did 53 to 56 Ford pickups. So like a 57 pickup rear end, 9-inch, bolted into those cars directly. So I was selling, I think it's 57 to 59 Ford rear ends. I would, get those rear ends out of the pile. They didn't, and then I would just clean them up. Didn't rebuild anything. I had used bearings in. All I did was clean them up and put a gasket in it, and I'd sell it to the guys over there. And then there was a couple hot rod shops in TCI, and then
so TCI has been around, a customer that long?
Yeah. So I was selling stuff to them, and that's because when in the earlier days, Charlie was out on the road buying rims, and I was in the shop running the machine shop and doing everything in the shop. And then Raymond, I think, was still in school, so he wasn't really involved. So I had, I would run Currie, but I had my side hustle was building rear ends. So I had these companies, and then when the golf cart thing kind of happened, it was like, well, let's incorporate the rear end, and it kind of just, the timing was good. The 9-inch rear end was super popular for hot rods. There was V8 Vegas, V8 mini trucks. The Jeep thing actually kind of started later because we were building rear ends for Vegas and mini trucks and Model A's and all that stuff. And then but our passion and our hobby was off-road stuff. With dune buggies and motorcycles. My dad got us involved in motorcycle racing back where, like in junior high school and stuff like that. So we had this off-road, if you're in Southern California, you're into off-road. That's just what it is.
Nothing's changed.
We were into off-road. It was buggies, sand buggies. It was Jeeps, motorcycles, and then, it just kind of evolved to, hey, let's build some rear ends that fit in Jeeps. And that kind of started us down another road of, under the off-road market.
So now before we get into that, though, like as far as, so let's start with you, Dad. As far as how many jobs you've ever had?
Well, I'm the only one that ever worked somewhere else. They graduated in 75.
Me and Charlie graduated in 75.
And they both went straight to work for my dad. We're working all the time. I didn't graduate high school till 78, and then I kept going to school for another 4 years after that. And I was working for my dad for piecework, doing other stuff. I was rebuilding forklifts on the side. I would do machine work for piecework, and I was still racing motorcycles at the time. I was the captain of the high school motocross team, and
that's cool.
Took money. So came home from school every day and did something, for pennies.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
that's how we worked in the early days. We worked for piecework. He didn't pay us by the hour. We got paid by the part. So
Yeah.
if you were machining a part, it was all manual machines. It was, you might get 25 cents for, and if you worked hard, you could make $7 or $8 an hour, but you had to break your ass to do it.
No kidding.
Then you got smart. You could run 2 or 3 machines at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so they were 7 years ahead of me as far as working full time and having things, but that and the end of the deal when he had a side hustle. Charlie he was in every wrecking yard in Southern California on a daily basis, and he had a side hustle of buying parts for other companies. So in '82 when I got I finished school and decided to get married about the same time, and but by that time I had worked for Taylor Dunn. When I first got my driver's license, I went there and worked in the service department just for a summer. My dad worked there, my mom worked there. I thought I was going to work there. That's where that was just destiny, I thought.
Well, he was going to become a cobbler at one point.
Yeah, but
My dad set him up in a shoe store.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so, but I went to Taylor Dunn and worked in the service department and had a similar situation where, everything I'd ever done was on piecework. And we were, in the service department, we get like a truckload of cars back from, used vehicles from a golf course, and you had to rebuild the car, change the batteries, put new brushes in the motor, whatever it was, mount new tires. And, I would just buckle down, and all the other guys working there, older guys than me, they're telling me, hey, you can't do 3 of these a day. We only do 2 a day, and that's the standard here. Blah blah blah, and I left there, and then I got up with the shoe deal. My dad's sister and her husband owned a shoe company, and
Ray was always Dad's favorite.
So
Me and Charlie weren't.
they
We were workers.
my Uncle Larry had passed away from cancer or
He had
something.
some kind of cancer, yeah.
And she wanted to sell the shoe company. It was a profitable deal and like an all cash business. And my dad said, "Hey, you're going to school with for business and blah blah blah. Why don't you see if you can run the shoe company?" So I spent a whole summer. They had a shoe plant, and they had like 6 stores around Newport Beach and Balboa.
Anthony's shoe stores, and I think the original store is still in Corona del Mar. The sign is still there. It has like a boot, like a lady's boot.
And it was my uncle. It was Tony, uncle. But it's Anthony's shoe store, and this was a serious business. You think it's just a shoe store. You come in. No, they were taking in shoes and repairing them and dyeing them and matching their ladies bring in their wedding dresses and the prom dresses, and they dye the shoes to match these wedding dresses, and I'm still going to school full time, pulling 14 units or something at school, and then I'm going straight down to there and learning about this shoe business deal going on, and it was just a business, and after being there for about 3 or 4 months, she decided, no, I'm not going to sell.
Yeah, well, she figured out after her husband died, they were actually making a lot more money than they knew of.
Oh, no way.
That's what happened.
Well,
they honestly think that he had money stashed somewhere, but they've never been able to find it because.
So, I had taken some basic accounting classes, and we're going through the books, and there's a lot of stuff that's just not right. But I'm a 20-year-old snot-nosed kid. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Yeah, this doesn't really add up. But but right after that, I was studying engineering, and I got an apprenticeship at Taylor Dunn and went back to work at Taylor Dunn, and this was when I'd been taking drafting since the 7th grade. Math, science, anything to do with engineering, and sitting in a cubicle, putting lines on paper and then sending my prints out to manufacturing, and then having to go out and explain the print to the to the guys building this stuff, and basically like teaching them how to weld, how to set up the welder. It was so aggravating to be in a position, that I'm there, and I want to do the whole deal. I want to design it and build it and see it work, and it was just a really frustrating deal, and the whole cubicle deal and sitting there and just working. I'd come to work in dark and leave. It was dark, and I was gaining weight like crazy, and still going to school, still pulling 14 units at the same time, and I came away from there. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to be an engineer. That's when I went back and took small business management, small business law, blah blah blah, and started over from scratch. And that's why I went to junior college for 4 years, because I did 2 different
to learn
lines
the
of
basics.
study.
Yeah.
But I got everything out of it that I wanted, and did very little of the stuff that wasn't gonna benefit me. And I think a lot of that stuff paid off in the long run.
That's cool. And then so you basically had your side hustle and then just worked at Currie. And then
Yeah.
Charlie was the same
I
way?
mean, I went to school for a while. I wasn't as committed to it, but it was different, because it was more like my dad was asking me, how many hours can you work? It wasn't like, hey, you need to go to school. When my kids, we basically said, you need to go to school. Anything else you make on the side, that's different. You have to go to school. For my dad, when me and Charlie was, hey, can you commit to 40 hours a week? I don't care about your school. If you want to go to school, I'll pay for it. But it was, I would rather have you working.
Now,
so
as
it was
now, as far
a
as
little different story.
As far as the work ethic goes, though, and the only reason I want to say this so everyone knows, he obviously cares about what he puts out there to the public, but at the time that you guys started taking over, doing the muscle car stuff and getting into even the hot rod stuff, at what point did the performance side of it matter, where people actually cared of the quality of the product rather than just getting something to bolt in?
It was Taylor Dunn for a long time was the main thing, but you realize when you're working for a company, you have one big customer. They have a lot of control over what you're doing.
Yeah.
So one of the things about starting, the automotive aftermarket thing was diversifying. We don't have one customer anymore. We're selling to all these hot rod shops, and not only that, we're selling direct to the public, and we're trying to figure it out. I mean, we were selling stuff. We were literally almost giving it away. So. Because it was we had so much of it, it was cheap.
Now, were you selling all over the United States?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a whole story that's, we were working along and cultivating the stuff. By the time I came to work there, Charlie had stuff going, and we incorporated that into the business. The Vega steering gears, Corvair steering gears, all these little side businesses that were going on, and he had we're in business with the hot rod companies, and then there was Taylor Dunn and Marketeer, or whatever they called it at that time.
Yeah, there's a couple little companies. We made
other
gears and sprockets for people because we had all the machinery to do that, and we actually made our own drive, that electric car drive. So we would make the whole rear end and sell it to some of the companies. Yeah. We would actually build that. I think you were the one that actually built those. Yeah. For a while.
Is that the thing with the? It has an electric motor.
Enclosed chain drive.
Enclosed chain drive, and it was every piece was fabricated. It was a lot of pieces to put this thing together, like the chain case all bolted together with gaskets. My dad had designed it all, and it was kind of designed after some of the stuff he had done for Taylor Dunn earlier. But like they made an aluminum chain cover, and he had 2 pieces of flame cut steel with a steel band that he made a fixture to bend the steel band, and you would bend the steel band, weld it together, and it would all bolt together with, I don't know, maybe 20 bolts that went around the whole thing with the gaskets. And So I mean, it worked the same way.
Yeah,
They
and
sold
there
a
was
lot
no
of
laser cutters in that day.
No, yeah, it was everything
you
was
got
hand
the basic
fabricated.
shape from a flame cutter and it had drill fixtures
And
to
we-
drill all the holes.
And we offered different gear ratios and stuff, and then it had like a drum brake, not on the wheels. The brake was actually on the pinion, which they later they outlawed that stuff. So
So now, all right. So now with all the car stuff, like just the evolution of going in to Rock Chalk, like how did you go from Currie Enterprises to Rock Chalk?
Well, first the retail side of the business, and this was kind of a great side story. So this hippie guy comes walking up the driveway one day, and he says he's in the magazine business, and he wants a car for his rear end, or a rear end for his car, and he wants to trade us advertising, and he talks to my dad, and we're working away, and my dad comes back and tells us, yeah, this guy, he wanted to trade, we wanted us to give him a rear end, just to trade for an ad out of a magazine. It's like, well, what's that ad worth? Didn't ask him, so I start researching, and there's no internet. This is back in the day. So what magazine was it? And it was Street Rodder magazine or something like that.
Tom McMullen from Street Rodder magazine.
So we went down and bought some Street Rodder magazine. We're looking through the ads and stuff, and start making some calls. What does it cost to put an ad in here? And it's like, holy crap. The deal he was offering was actually a good deal.
Well, and he was telling us, hey, you guys need to start advertising in the magazine and start selling rear ends to these hot rod builders. He goes, you guys need to get in the business. And and at the time we're just selling stuff to the local hot rod companies building hot rods.
Word of mouth.
And it was like, hey, you need to offer this stuff. And so
And he was a family friend for years, right? I mean,
he was after that. He was him and my dad would hang out, go do a bunch of stuff. Then he started an off-road magazine, four-wheel drive and sport utility magazine. So he was a different guy. If anybody ever knew who Tom McMullen was, he was different, But he liked to do stuff, and my dad liked to do stuff. And so they went to South America together. They went to Europe together. They did a bunch of off-roading together when he started the magazine. So they hung out together. He didn't like my mom at all because he was really
and his girlfriend / wife / partner spoke like 5 languges, or they could go anywhere in the world, and she could communicate. Yeah. She's Spanish, Portuguese. I don't like Japanese. She spoke all kinds of languages that allowed them. They could anywhere they went, they had a communication.
Her name was Deanna.
So now did that help evolution when he got into the off-road magazine?
Well, I mean, this was a small business at my parents' home, and we placed an ad. We gave Tom McMullen a rear end, and it was a 3 months of advertising in Street Rodder magazine, and the first deal was we had to build a rear end to take it down to their studio to photograph for a ad. So we had to kind of design the ad. What are we going to say? And didn't think nothing of it. I put my mom's phone number. Was in the ad.
Yeah,
and
our home phone.
Our home phone number.
So we didn't go. They were answering. My mom would answer the phone.
Yeah. So.
You'll have to call back. And
it was so funny because we'd be out in the garage working, and the garage was 100 feet from the house, and we had one of the screen doors with a big spring on it. So when you open it up, and she'd John, somebody's calling from Tennessee. You need to get on the phone. And what? And you come in the office and talk to the guy and make a deal. And we wrote down the order on pieces of paper that we chased around these little invoice books that you got at the Hallmark store or whatever.
Was that a way so you can remember how much you charge a person for rear end?
Yeah, well, every deal was a new deal. we didn't have a price list.
There was no wholesale retail. It was
Celebrate
whatever you wanted. We would, You know, I think we had some
Wow.
kind of price made up.
That's so.
Yeah.
But so then which is very unique, and that is a great story. But not like, but that's what I want to try to figure out. Like, obviously, moving forward though, like, and Orzen is to really figure out, like, you guys went from hot rods and muscle cars to a complete off-road brand. Did it?
Yeah, I think, we went Jeeping. Well, we had, at one point, we all had Jeeps over the years. Now we're married and we have kids, and we have a Blazer and a Bronco too, and my little brother had a Toyota truck, and somehow we got invited to come out to the Tierra del Sol event, and we were going to take a rear end out there. We had a rear end on the pickup, or the tailgate of a pickup truck. That was our display, and I had a 9-inch rear end on my Blazer with a Detroit locker in it, with 28-inch Mickey Thompsons on it.
Yeah.
It's a real off-road vehicle. And we went out there, and I mean, kind of, like up here, you think you were good until you go out and you got your ass kicked by, we were high-centered everywhere. We were stuck everywhere. And
We had a good time.
At the end of the time, at the end of the week, it was like, I'm going home. I'm buying a Jeep tomorrow. And of course, by that time I'd owned a couple Jeeps previous to that, but now, so we're talking, that was what, 84 or 85, something
The
like
Jeep
that.
I bought, was an 81. So I think my dad's was an 82. They were all in those ages. I remember yours was like a 78 or 79.
It's a 78
We
CJ7.
bought Jeeps and we built them. But I had out of high school, I had a CJ2A, and then, I had at least 2 different Broncos, that had, because we were into Broncos for a while. My dad had a couple Broncos. He started out with like a Bronco with a manual transmission and no power steering. And then I remember he bought a 74 Bronco that had, air conditioning, power steering, all the good
Fully
stuff.
loaded.
Yeah, and he kind of fixed it up, and so, and we thought, but back then our off-roading was we'd just go out in the desert and drive on dirt roads, or take a trip down to Baja, drive on dirt roads. We didn't really get into the rock crawling and that part of it until my dad came with Tom McMullen to Moab. And my dad came back and told us, "Hey, you guys, we went to Moab."
What year? I gotta say.
I'm not sure the year of that.
84, I think.
I think Tom McMullen had just bought a brand new. I don't think it was 84. I think it was. What was the first Jeep Tom had? Didn't he have like a 89 YJ or something? What he got a brand new YJ when they first came out. I'm thinking it's 89, and so I think we'd put rear end in it.
Well, YJ came out in, the last CJ was a 76. It would have been.
No, the last CJ was an 86.
Or 86.
So it would have been
87.
So Tom McMullen bought, so
Dad came up here. He had a 74 Bronco with probably 32-inch Terra.
Armstrong, what would they call that tire?
True Tracks.
True Tracks.
Had 32-inch True Tracks
With
on
350 gears, and
and a 3 on the tree.
and he found out he wasn't geared low enough. But I believe they would come back and tell us about Hell's Revenge and Moab Rim and stuff, and telling us, hey, you guys got to go. You got to come out here. It was awesome. We had a great time. They'd tell us all the stuff they did. And that actually started with Tom McMullen dragging my dad to these different events. So
Wow, wow. So it's been since the 80s then. So yeah, that's where, like, what I wanted to end this thing was just really the transition into rock chalk. And what I was trying to get at that was just basically the transition into off-road. And that's what it sounds like. But it's basically in the 80s is really the transition from the CJ to the YJ.
So we all bought Jeeps.
we all bought CJs.
Mine
CJ7s.
came with the V8, but it came with a 360, and I went out and found a 401 AMC and put it in there. And I put big tires for the time. I think I put 32s on it. And but John built a big block
I had
Chevy.
an 81, and I put but it was a six-cylinder manual. So I had a big block Chevy out of a boat I built. So I put that in it with a Turbo 400 and the Dana 300 transfer case. And then when I did that, conversion on the engine. Then I went back and rebuilt the Jeep again, painted it, and I actually put 35-inch tall tires on it. Which at the time those were big because everybody was running 33s at that time. So I'd modified the fenders a little bit, and we put 35s in this thing with a big block Chevy in it. And I had that Jeep for quite a few. I think until I bought a YJ down the road a ways. When I had somebody here in Moab offer to buy that thing from me, I sold it.
Yeah.
I actually took him for a test drive here in Moab.
We all had 9-inch rear ends in our Jeeps. His Jeep had a 9-inch front end.
Yeah,
and that was it right there.
Yeah, that kind of started down this road of everything I built for that Jeep. I ended up making it a product, and it started out with the 9-inch rear end, the 9-inch front end, and then we were making the greasable shackles. We had a twin stick shifter for the Dana 300. We had replacement aluminum knobs for the dash because those early Jeeps, everything was cable operated. And when you pulled on the knob, they were plastic, they would pull off. So we would make these replacement aluminum knobs that you would break the plastic knobs with a pair of pliers and put the other ones on there with a set screw.
So we made thousands of knobs.
Yeah, and we were...
So you're making all kinds of parts then.
Yeah, it started us down that road, but it all really started with we were making parts for the Jeep that we owned, like the tow shackle, because we were flat towing our Jeeps because we didn't have trailers or motorhomes or anything at the time. We had, I had a Suburban I would flat tow mine with or whatever.
I had a camper van.
And so we made the tow shackles, and that just everything kind of led from one thing to another. We did a steering gear brace. There was a bunch of small parts. And remember, the original thing was just a little bifold. So when a guy would buy a rear end, we'd send him this bifold of the parts we had for the CJs.
All the accessories.
And they would come back and buy everything on there. And it was all cheap.
Yeah.
We didn't mark up anything. We would set a price on it. So it was a learning experience because we even had the owner of 4 Parts tell us, you guys, you sell everything too cheap. We can't buy it from you and mark it up and sell it. You got to raise your price so we can mark it down. So that was actually Greg's dad, George Adler, told us that. And this was probably back in the late 80s, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that is where for me, that is where I wanted to end it today, is basically the understanding of going from the cars to the Jeeps. But literally for Currie Archives #1, it's just getting to get these stories out. There's so many people that ask so many questions about the family and the heritage and the legacy that obviously Grandpa has created, and now obviously myself, my cousins, my brother are involved with it. I just want to share these stories. So obviously, for everyone out there listening, if you guys have comments or questions, let us know. This is literally #1. We want to do many, many more of these. So thank you guys for coming on, and thank you guys for both joining for episode #1.
thanks for having us.
Thank you.